Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's DA.
All right, welcome inside episode 5 of the Permission Granted podcast. So glad you decided to stop on by. We've had a lot of fun over the first month plus of doing it, so hopefully you guys are enjoying it as well. We remind you there's 2 ways to get the Permission Granted podcast, either on YouTube, youtube.com/The DA Show. And remember, on YouTube, if you were a user there, you can subscribe to anybody's channel, including ours. Or on iTunes, just search DA's Permission Granted. And there you can, of course, subscribe to get it uploaded to your iPad or smartphone or your mobile device, whatever it is you use to listen to the show. So, very excited about this episode of the show. Mraz and Brock and the producer's side B of the podcast coming up a little bit later on after this. But first, we speak to an actor that's been part of Hollywood really for over 30 years or so, or at least 25 years. He's a guy that has been in over 100 movies and was kind of one of the central figures of the Hollywood tabloids and paparazzi right when it's starting to burgeon in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Tom Arnold dropping on by the Permission Granted podcast, and he's touring the U.S. doing some stand-up right now, and we'll get to the dates where you can check him out in your local area in a little bit. But Tom joins us here on the show. Tom, how's it going? Thanks so much for joining us.
Good, buddy. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining us. And I always find it interesting for those actors that have gone into Hollywood and done a ton of movies, and you obviously have, and then doing the stand-up. A lot of comics will say, man, stand-up is kind of the purest form of the comedy. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Well, I feel like when it's what I started doing 32 years ago at the University of Iowa. It's what I really started, it started my career. But I also feel like what's great about it is before I go on stage in Columbia or wherever, it doesn't matter that I've been in 120 movies or that I just had an argument with my wife, or nothing matters except the next hour and 10 minutes I have to entertain these people. Like, you have to hyper-focus, and I guess it's a little like sports where you get all this stuff going on in your life, but during the game, it doesn't matter. I mean, you gotta play the game, and that's the closest thing I could relate. It's just, at the end of it, I do feel better than just about any other thing I do. I mean, I unfortunately, I'm not a huge movie star, so I can't just do that. So I have to write, and I have to do all these different things, but stand-up comedy is pretty special, especially when it goes well and when you've worked really hard at it. And so I love it.
You've had that experience having done it 30 years ago, and now the culture has changed and technology has changed and comedy has changed. Do you feel like you've got to do different things to grab the audience's attention? Has the dynamic changed over those 30 years with the audience?
Well, I mean, what for me, I think the audience knows a little bit about me and my personal life, and I've always on TV and on whatever, I feel like I've been pretty honest, and so I can't fake, this is what, I just got married once, and, so I think because of technology, people are more hyper-aware of different things, and certainly, I had my first child, and what I want to teach him is life is much better if you figure out ways to be a fan of people, to root for people than root against them, and I think technology with Twitter and these different things, there's a whole market now for people that just root against people. I mean, they just make comments. I don't think they mean bad. I think that probably would have happened 32 years ago if it had been available to us, the rest of us at the University of Iowa. We would have been the smart guy that had to make nasty comments or whatever. We would have thought, well, that's what you do. But there's certainly that now, and everybody has an opinion. And I do wonder when things come up that are actual issues, how much people generally care about it, because it seems like on social media people really care about it, but then you go out to the clubs and you travel around the country and you find out 80% of people don't care that much about either side of something like so passionately, and the country seems so divided politically, but yet 80% of people kind of agree with each other, and so it's a good reminder. But I also feel like sports fans are easily the craziest, most opinionated people, and I think that's the way I was, that's the way I am, and so all of a sudden you have access to social media with that attitude, like, my feelings about being an Iowa Hawkeye are so visceral and so from, going to the games of the 60s with my grandfather and my passion and what I care about, to unleash that on social media without, that's the thing about sports fans. They feel this way, and then they're like, oh, I could talk like this about politics too, and I think we're figuring out how it's going to work for people.
Well, when you were in the Hollywood blender, when you were married to Roseanne, late 80s, early 90s, I mean, there was a lot of attention on you at that time, a lot of attention, but that's still before social media, and that's kind of the start of tabloid journalism in some ways, but it's before what is going on now technology-wise. Is it hard to even imagine for you if you would have gone through that in today's day and age with everything that we got going on?
Oh, I mean, I've thought about that before. It just seems so omnipresent, the tabloid stuff then, like probably 1988 to 1994, 95 when we were married, and also we were guilty of playing into that. But if there had been the social media, first of all, I don't think we would have been married even 4 years, but because it became, at a certain point in that relationship, just the tabloid media became part of the relationship where we were confused, like who is this couple, and then who's this other thing out here? And I think social media would have just made it would have made things come to a head much quicker, or maybe it would have, made things better. I don't know, but it would have been, I do remember feeling like, boy, it's hard to kind of breathe with some of this stuff. And like I say, we were guilty of playing into stuff too, but with the social media, then suddenly everybody is a critic. Everybody has access to an opinion, a public opinion about you, where you go, what you do, when you, so, I mean, my wife pretty much knows where I am when I travel because somebody's tweeting about it wherever I go. I saw him, he walked into Black and White. So I can't even imagine, like, being up to, I have to remind myself that, not that I think of being up to no good, but, if I'm supposed to be on a diet and I'm over there, she busted me a few times, in a bakery or something. They're like, oh, it's so nice that he's here. And so she's like, what did you eat today? I was like, nothing. And she was like, oh, well, there's a picture of you. And I was like, oh, my gosh. So imagine truly bad behavior, and then you've got that. So, I think that it would have been hard. It would have been hard. And if you don't like people to see what you look like all the time, right now, when I take my son, I have a 17-month-old son, and there's been a few times where we go to the park, and then all of a sudden I notice a little bit of car pull up and a bunch of guys with cameras, and they take pictures, and I'll say, hey, just, take your picture, but then let us do our thing. Because first of all, I'm afraid the other people at the park are going to go, oh my God, Tom Arnold is drawing these people to the park, and now they're taking pictures and they're all these kids. So I don't freak out about it, but I'm like, please just do it and then move on. And they do sometimes, and they don't. But then on the other hand, there was my wife. I finally had my son by myself, and I took him to the park. And when I'm on the road, my wife takes pictures all day, and we'll send them of my boy, and it makes me feel like I'm a little bit part of it, and I really appreciate it. So I took him to the park. She was in Cabo, and she said, "Do you have any pictures?" I was like, "Oh, I forgot." She goes, "But I take pictures for you all the time." I go, "I know, I got just all caught up." And then I went on the internet, and these tabloids are taking pictures, and there's pictures of this European thing already. And I go, "Well, actually, here's the pictures of me swinging with him." And so, I was grateful about that. So I mean, I don't. Plus, I've been around so long that to complain about stuff seems ridiculous. And you protect your family, you protect your privacy, but you have no control over what people say or do out there. So, you got to have thick skin. And the same with these athletes. When they freak out, and they have every right to. I love when athletes fire back on Twitter and just get engaged, because they're human beings, and at some point somebody's prodding you in the chest. You're like, But I also want to tell them this. The times that I fired back on people, or, there was a kid that had a website, Tom Arnold's the Devil. Well, I tracked that guy down. And
you did?
And so I confronted him.
Really?
But here's the sad part. His mother wrote, he was living in her basement, and he had no friends until he had this website called Tom Arnold is the Devil, and now he's got 30 friends, and they communicate all the time and they have fun with this. And I felt so terrible that I was like, buddy, just do it.
Have at it.
Yeah, because I think when you go, oh, we're all equal, I'm going to confront this person man to man. Well, you find out that, maybe they didn't mean it that way, or maybe they've got some kind of a sad situation. And you know what? We're so blessed with the lives that we have that I don't think we want to confront that. And the people that are smart just move on.
So we always make this joke about bloggers sitting in their mother's basement.
Yeah,
but
it's
in
true.
this case, it actually literally was true. This was a guy living in his mother's basement.
I'd say it's about 90% true. That's what I think. But no, it's we're figuring out social media. I get so much news from social media. When you have a son and you don't have a lot of time, to pull out my phone and just check what's going on with sports especially, but also, in the world in general, and you can scan through stuff. I do Twitter, communicate with people that sometimes I think, there's 12 people. It says there's 120,000 people following, but I think it's just 12.
There's 110,000 spam bots, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think I actually have community. But also, when I was a kid, man, I remember the first time I met an athlete. Vida Blue came to Tumble, Iowa, and I freaked. Nobody like that came to where I lived. And I actually shook his hand at the Holiday Inn, and he was investing at a farm or something. And I was like, oh, my God. But can you imagine being a kid now and being able to somebody famous you love or whatever, and they will actually respond to you. It is crazy, and it's good in so many ways. And we're talking about child abuse, and we're talking about domestic abuse, and we're talking about things that need to be talked about, and I think it's working out wonderfully this way.
Well, yeah, the Ray Rice situation was obviously a huge controversy, still is. Now we have the Adrian Peterson situation, and it feels like there's another one of these stories every single day that is not about sports, it's about culture and society, and it ties into athletes. You obviously saw the underbelly of Hollywood, and I'm guessing still do. When you look at sports and you look at Hollywood, which one is kind of a tougher escape? Because they both include real life, but I think that there might be people in both that it's kind of depressing at times to have to kind of look at and cover and hear about.
Well, I felt like, and I know Roseanne felt this way with her show, and I felt as a writer, producer of the show, we have this show, so many people watch the show, which, by the way, when that show was, and this is not that long ago, there was literally 10 times as many people watching that show as the number one show. I don't know how to explain it. The first time I appeared on Roseanne, the show in 1989, I think 47 million people watched it.
Wow.
And you can imagine how broken up things are now, and how, if that, not that many people watch.
That's like the
anything.
Super Bowl. I mean, that's like
exactly.
a Super Bowl number.
Exactly, and that was kind of, but I also felt like, we have a responsibility, and I always felt that in the writer's room where, first of all, this woman is, it's about this woman and her point of view, and her average woman, and she doesn't look perfect, and it's about people in her life, and these are the people that are all over this country. So we have a responsibility because we have access to this many people, and I think the NFL, because they are the number one show now, and it is a TV show. It is sports, and it's competition, and it's great, but it's a TV show. And so I think what they're learning is, we do have a social responsibility, not just saying it, but, when issues come up, now I think the great thing is that the NFL, because of all this stuff, the Adrian Peterson thing, for instance, everything I know about him, and I've met him, he's a nice guy. He supports other people's charities. But here, the great thing about talking about this, I grew up in a very abusive childhood. I know what that 4-year-old kid, I've seen those marks. I've had those marks. I don't tell other people how to raise their kids, but I feel like with him, we're having this conversation because there's so many of us men who say, our job as a man is to punish ourselves, or is to discipline. That's what I'm going to do. And I imagine the pressure on an African-American man is much more, because you're like, well, if I don't do that, my son's going to get hurt out there. Because people are crappy to black kids, and that's a fact. And I'm going to discipline my son so that he is safe. And that comes from a pure place. Now, what happens is when you have 4 or 5 sons with 4 or 5 women, they aren't living under your roof. So when they are there, you want to be the best dad you can be, right? You're like, oh, here's the things I'm going to give my son. I'm going to play with him, and I'm going to discipline him, and I'm going to have it structured like a football practice or like a whatever, and it gets away from you. And that's what, you just have to. I'm sure Adrian Peterson, what I love about it is he agreed. He's talking to somebody now because the mothers of these kids are very brave. They're not like saying, oh, he's a football star, I'm not going to say anything about it. They're like, I want to protect my little boy because this doesn't look right, and it doesn't. And so the social media aspect, there's a lot of people say, no matter what, he is right. Well, they're stupid. He made a mistake. He knows it. But now we're all talking about it, and I feel so good about other 4-year-old kids because I was that 4-year-old kid, and there was nobody looking out for me. I can promise you that. And now we're having this discussion about discipline, and just because our parents beat the crap out of us doesn't mean it's good for us. And so the NFL doesn't want to be. They just want to play games and they want to celebrate stuff. But they are so important to our lives right now, and it's wonderful. And people are talking about stuff. And I heard Chris Carter saying the most amazing stuff, and we're all like, oh, this is somebody's watching out for kids, and it's the darn NFL, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you've opened up about an abusive childhood growing up, and so when this Adrian Peterson story hit, did it hit differently for you than other sports stories have? Because you're a huge sports fan. I'm
sure it definitely did. I mean, and I see the pictures, and the kid is 4, and I just, and I know what that, I've been there, and nobody speaks. Everybody, even Ray Rice, there are people speaking for his wife. There's people speaking for him, and Adrian Peterson. There's people speaking for him. There's people speaking for fathers, but there's nobody speaking for the 4-year-old kids out there. I mean, really, because they don't vote, and we don't. But yet, I'm very connected to what that felt like. And before I had my son, and I am making mistakes every day, I'm sure, but I started paying attention to, hey, is this. Discipline is important, but what do I certainly don't want to, just because I was abused and physically and sexually, but I still want to be a good parent. I want to do the right things, and you ask yourselves these things. But everything I've read is like, it does your kid no good to beat the crap out of him. And I kind of had a feeling that was true. But, I had 23 years.
That was the inclination, right?
I had 23 years to plan to be a father. It wasn't like, I'm suddenly a father, and I'm going to try to do everything. I'm scared to death that someone's going to hurt my son when he's a teenager, which is a very valid fear. So I'm going to, but I also know that with my factual father, the fear of physical violence, nothing compared to the fear of disappointing him, and that. The look when he would be disappointed. I'd rather have the crap smacked out of me as a I just. And I know that if there's some way, there's just some things you can't, and I think that you say, oh, we're all equal and we're all, but some of us are bigger men, and Adrian Peterson is a big man, and when you look at him and juxtapose that with a 4-year-old kid, you're like, you've got to, it's frightening. You're frightening. I'm 6'2", I weigh 200 pounds. I'm a big guy. There's a lot of ways to do things, but the great thing is by the end of all of this, the domestic abuse stuff, which we're talking about, and what you do is you take the first reactions, which are crazy left and crazy right, and throw them out, and then something in the middle, we try to make ourselves all a little bit better. And I'll tell you, I had lunch with a very funny black woman yesterday who's a friend. I'm doing this talk show, and everybody has a different opinion, and she's like, well, the worst part about the Ray Rice thing was afterwards, when she was just laying there and he did nothing, there was no humanity for her. And so everybody has a different thing that they see when we see something, and we certainly love to judge people, and there's a certain segment that says, oh, he makes $1 million a year, I'm going to judge him. I'm going to, he has every opportunity in the world, I'm going to judge him. Or worse yet, I'm going to judge his wife. I need, and another thing we do, and I'll quit rambling, is, with the Rihanna thing and the Chris Brown thing, I think there was a lot of people that judged Rihanna and tried to punish her and felt like, oh, she's not doing everything she can. She's not a spokesman. She's not. And social media gives people that shouldn't have the access, and sometimes we take it completely wrong, but it'll all straighten out.
You had mentioned your son before. It's amazing. He's not quite 18 months yet, a year and a half old, but you have gotten healthy. You've gotten in shape because of him. You've lost over 100 pounds, and you've talked about this, which is just a remarkable thing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, buddy.
But I wonder when you said, you've been caught in the bakery by the wife, and you've been, and I know that there's some things that you miss. When you're trying to lose the weight and try to get healthy, what is the one thing you're going, gosh, I just wish I could do that one more time. I wish I could eat that one more time.
I love sugar. I love sugar more than, there's a couple things. Growing up in a farm community, I knew I couldn't give up meat. So I had to figure out, how am I going to structure this thing? So I gave up gluten and sugar, which is, I eat gluten-free bread. I just needed some structure. I needed to not eat a loaf of bread before every meal, and I needed not to eat dessert every meal. Now, there are people that make sugar-free desserts and gluten-free pasta and gluten-free stuff. I just needed to have some structure to say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to – that way I can eat as much as I want, but not these two areas. And then I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But, oh, my gosh, the desserts I see and the bakery, I mean, I just feel like a lot of times, I just got to – and it's the same with fast food. Sometimes I'm driving by and I'm like, I got to have a double quarter pounder with cheese. I just have to stop this car because there's something that I miss and you know what? Once in a while, it's okay to do that stuff, and then you jump back on the wagon.
Yeah, I saw my personal metabolism going down. I said, boy, you know what? The 4 slices of pizza and the Sunday after that's probably going to have to stop at some point. But, like you said, it's all about structure and discipline and just kind of recognizing what the weaknesses are.
Well, also, I grew up in a way that every time we ate, it was like a competition. And I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and all my buddies are big guys, and we're like, let's see if we could eat 35 tacos. I mean, it's like not making – and then you get to a point where that is – when you work at Hormel at the meatpacking platter, when you're baling hay, you could do that. But then when you're an actor and you're eating 3 double quarter pounders with cheese, because that's, how many you can stuff in yourself, then it becomes a problem, and then you have to, But I also exercise a lot. I do a lot of cardio. I do a lot of mild strength training, and it's sort of having a balance. And I'm not big on balance, but I think I found it here, and it certainly helps having a kid. You have to look at it and say, I'm not going to feed him this horrible stuff because I don't want. Maybe I shouldn't eat it myself. If it's not good enough for my son, maybe I should not do it.
You've got so much cool stuff coming up. You are touring the U.S. doing stand-up. So coming up Friday and Saturday at the end of September, 26th and 27th, Deja Vu Comedy Club in Columbia, Missouri. Then later, a couple weeks later in October, the 9th and 11th, you've got, or 9th through 11th, Magooby's Joke House just outside of Baltimore. We are on in Baltimore, 105.7 The Fan. And you're filming the 2nd season of Redneck Family for CMT. And you've done Running Wild with Bear Grylls. I mean, You've got everything going on right now.
It sounds like everything and yet nothing. No, I gotta. I'm having a lot of fun. I love doing stand-up, so I hope people come out. And I do a lot of different things, and I think it's supposed to be that way. So, I'm worried about my Giants, but you know what? And my Iowa Hawkeyes, but life is good.
You became a Giants fan out in Iowa, huh?
Well, here's what happened. When I was in 7th grade, believe it or not, I was a quarterback, and I had a size 8 fitted head, like not a one size fits all. My head was size 8 then, and we were red and white was our colors, except they didn't have an 8 helmet in red, so they got a blue helmet, and I was the quarterback with a blue helmet, and I was like, well, everybody else here in Southeast Iowa is Vikings or Chiefs or Bears. I'm going to be different. I got this blue helmet. I'm going to put an NY on the side, and I'm going to study the New York Giants, and that's how I became a fan. And through serendipity, I got to know the owner and the owner's son, and I'm the godfather of one of the Tisch kids. Just through. But I love I say, well, this is my team. And, the Chicago Cubs are my baseball team. The Giants are my football team. The Iowa Hawkeyes are this. I specifically have different teams of different sports I support, and I stick to it.
Well, we'll wrap up with this. I worked out in Kansas City for years, and I went to Syracuse. And so Syracuse played at Iowa back in 07 or 08, so I got to go up there for a game. I had the best time at that Iowa game. And Iowa led that game 35-0 by the time halftime rolled around, so it was worth it just to leave and go back out to the bars at that point, being a Syracuse fan. The people were amazing. The tailgates were amazing. I didn't know there were that many ways to drink a beer before a football game. My goodness, was that that's a wonderful Saturday out there in Iowa
Yeah,
City.
Iowa's great, and Iowa City's great, and Kinnick, and the people, and there's a lot of ways to drink a beer. There's a lot of ways to smuggle beer into the stadium, as I remember. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of guys from Syracuse in my business. It's
too many. I know.
How
too
many Syracuse resumes I see, but
too many.
I think they must be doing something right there because you guys are great.
Follow Tom Arnold on Twitter, really easy, at Tom Arnold. So that's going to be the latest in all of his projects. As we mentioned before, though, end of September in Columbia, Missouri at Deja Vu Comedy Club. Then in October at Magooby's Joke House just outside of Baltimore. You can follow his schedule at all those places and catch up with all of his new stuff going on, including the stand-up. Tom, this was so fun, man. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a great time of your career right now, and we love being a little part of it right now.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Good luck to you guys.
You got it, man. Thanks again, Tom.
See you, buddy.
All right, awesome stuff with Tom Arnold, and let's bring in Mraz now. Boy, it's funny. Remember Mraz? I mean, people might forget that he was a host of Best Damn Sports Show for 4 years, and Best Damn, even though all those little Fox Sports regional things kind of folded up shop and don't really exist in the same way anymore, that still kind of is a very memorable piece of sports pop culture and sports media. And still, you can see what they were trying to do even today. Just in terms of Tom's role with Best Damn Sports Show, it kind of lives on, doesn't it?
Just from listening to the 20 minutes with you or so, it totally resonates. What Best Damn Sports Show did, and I remember watching it when I was a kid, it combined that man talk with the sports talk, and how Tom Arnold can just be so diverse in what he talks about and so free-flowing and entertaining, and no matter what he talks about, you're glued and you want to listen.
Well, he's a legit sports fan. I mean, the fact that he grew up a huge Hawkeyes fan, loves the Iowa Hawkeyes, huge Cubs fan. I didn't know this, that he was a New York Giants fan, and it's crazy that he became such close family friends with the Mraz, the Tishes. I had no idea he was the godfather to one of the Tish kids. Crazy, but he just mentioned that a couple of minutes ago in the podcast. He's just a giant sports fan. It's genuine and it's totally legit.
Always love that, because for a lot of us sports fans, we also go to the entertainment world. We love these comedians. We love the movies and stuff like that. And it's even better when a guy like that is the sports fan in him that you could kind of relate to. And you know what? This guy's sitting on the couch watching the same painful loss as you are. It makes you appreciate what he does on the other side even more.
Yeah, and also that we see so many actors or musicians or people in Hollywood that just kind of fake being a big fan when it's easy or when when teams are really good. Like we just saw Drake wearing a Marcus Mariota jersey because he was performing in Eugene, Oregon, or something like that. I don't know where. He was up in there in Oregon. He was up there in Oregon at some point. But he's supported like 17 different teams at this point. There's so many frauds, and I feel like when you find the genuine Hollywood sports fans, you can totally tell.
It's so true. Just like watching Jack Nicklaus on the sidelines there. Jack Nicholson on the sidelines there in the Laker games. You know he's there.
Not the Golden Bear.
No. Just like Billy Crystal there with the Yankee stuff. But there's a lot of guys, like you said, basically Drake is acting like he's the assistant coach there with the Raptors during the playoffs, and then he's over there sitting front row with the Miami games. There's so many frauds. Justin Bieber touching the Stanley Cup. But a genuine fan, a blue-collar guy like Tom Arnold, it's great. It's great to see.
You think the Billy Crystal's legit?
I do think Billy Crystal's legit.
Because you're a Yankee fan. You think he's a legit Yankee fan.
I do, and I'm usually the first guy to sniff out these phonies. Everything he mentions starts with Mickey Mantle. It's almost like ad nauseum where you're tired of it. So for that, I really do think he's legit.
Do you think he's still a Yankee fan? Because it's one thing to grow up and love Mickey Mantle and then now always wear the Yankees cap, wherever you go. But I don't know. He lives in L.A. He's a big Clipper. Can you be a Yankee and a Clipper fan? Is that possible?
Hey, the guy ain't grinding out 9 to 5s. He's got the Yankee games basically starting at 4 o'clock West Coast time. I'll take his word for it. Although wearing the Met hat and City Slicker still ticks me off.
The one guy that I think is such a fraud is Ashton Kutcher. He likes to promote that he's a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan, too, ironically. He grew up in Iowa. And he's always wearing Bear stuff. And granted, there's Chicago and Iowa very close together, so you could definitely do it. But I don't know. He's always around Bear stuff, and I get so bent out of shape. He was part of the NFL film special on Walter Payton, A Football Life. And he was like, oh, I was in Jerry Jones's box one year, and we were debating who was the best running back. And I said Walter Payton, and my friend said Eric Dickerson or Jim Brown or whatever. And I'm like, shut up. If you're a real sports fan, it's hard for me to take you seriously saying I was in Jerry Jones's box for the freaking Super Bowl.
It's so the moment you say the words, I was in Jerry Jones's box, I immediately consider you a fraud because Jerry Jones is just looking for whatever hoopla. And inside of you, you're not going to root for whatever way Jerry's rooting for, even if it is a Super Bowl.
Wasn't it cool to hear Tom Arnold really open up about Adrian Peterson and disciplining his kids and parenting? I think a lot of people just think that Tom Arnold's kind of a goofball and obviously a comedian, married to Roseanne, and he just really opened up and was really honest and open and genuine about it. I thought that was so interesting.
It was great to hear him talk very seriously. And what was fascinating about it, and you've heard a lot of people say this surrounding the Peterson, is the old excuse, well, I was beat as a kid, like coming from that generation, so they understand where he's coming from. But he flat out said, well, just because that happened to you doesn't mean it's right. And the 4-year-old kid doesn't have his voice. And Tom Arnold, knowing that he went through that, says, basically he would love to be a voice like that and knows what the kid went through and everything like that. He's taken the opposite approach that a lot of people from that generation, not a lot of people, but some have taken, so to speak.
Yeah, some are. I thought it was, it's really interesting because Tom Arnold actually probably 5-6 years ago, something like this, opened up and said he was sexually abused as a kid and just some awful stories when he was 4 or 5 years old. He was babysat by a neighbor and just awful, horrid stories. And he wanted to just kind of expose it and get it out there. And so he was just really honest about all that. And it kind of weaves into his story about tracking down the blogger that ripped him to shreds. I don't remember the blog or the website, Tom Arnold's The Devil. Maybe because Tom Arnold tracked this guy down and I guess got it shut down. But how unreal is it that for once one of the actors tracked down this guy and met him and, I don't know, threatened him or whatever? It's like, could you imagine running a blog out of your parents' basement and then having the celebrity that you trash come to your house and threaten you? It's amazing.
It's got to be the ultimate thrill, and I bet you that kid becomes a huge Tom Arnold fan after that, knowing that he had the guts to track him down. And how about the cliche that he's literally in his mom's basement running the blog?
That's amazing. That really is amazing because, blogging and being part of social media and being on the internet has taken on a million different faces and dynamics. I mean, you can become a millionaire being a blogger. There are professionals. There are professionals that have different jobs that use the internet and blog for a second career and stuff like that. Advertising. There's a million ways to make money and on it. And for the one guy to literally be in his parents' basement, his mom's basement, blogging about Tom Arnold, and then ding dong. Hello, who is it? It's Tom Arnold. I'm here to see Johnny.
You could just imagine the guy on the couch yelling for his mom to make meatloaf like it's Wedding Crashers. It's so predictable.
It's great. It's great. So that was good stuff with Tom Arnold. All right, side B coming up right now, the Permission Granted podcast. The producer's side, Mraz and Barack will bicker about something. And we remind you, you can get us by downloading us on YouTube or watching us on YouTube. But you can subscribe to the podcast, youtube.com/The DA Show. And then also on iTunes. Go to iTunes and just search DA's Permission Granted, and you can get them subscribed and uploaded to your smartphone or your iPhone, whatever you got going on, your iPad, automatically by subscribing there. So, all right, we thank you for listening to this week, and more with the Permission Granted podcast now.
Welcome into Side B of the Permission Granted podcast with myself, Kenny Brock from the Wheels of Steel, and Sean Mraz, executive producer of the DA Show. Mraz, how we feeling today?
Feeling happy and hefty, Kenny.
Happy and hefty. I don't know how happy you can be after an 0-2 Giants start to the season, but we'll dive into that a little later. Obviously, this is our favorite time of the year, right, Mraz? NFL is back. College football is back. This is what we wait for all year long. This is what the dog days of summer, putting in those shows where we're talking, NL Central baseball and AL West baseball in June and July, just waiting for training camps to open.
You're not a big Texas Rangers guy?
Unfortunately, baseball has kind of fallen out of favor in my eyes. But it's been a bizarre, to say the least, start to the NFL season. Last week, obviously, week 1, we had the opening of the season. There were some pretty interesting storylines going in, but obviously something that overtook the show for the entire week was the Ray Rice video of him knocking out his now wife, Janae Rice. That dropped Monday morning at 4 a.m. TMZ put that out there. So that obviously took over the airwaves for the entire week. And now heading into week 3 here, we have the Adrian Peterson story and the possible child abuse that went on in 2 separate incidents with him. It's really been an inauspicious start to the NFL season. I mean, this is not what we expected at all. Obviously, we want to break down storylines, but you have to cover these stories because this is what is going on in the NFL world, in the NFL realm. And to me, it's kind of just overtaken everything, and it's really sad, the state of the NFL right now.
Sad is the perfect word to use. It's almost sucked the life and the fun out of everything we enjoy about looking forward to the fall.
No doubt.
Right off the bat, when we got done with the Week 1 games on Sunday night, heading into that Monday, that was when the Ray Rice, the video dropped. So it was teed up where you didn't really have ample time to react. And while you'll still talk about the games here or there, you do a whole week on that and
right.
The travesty that was into the Adrian Peterson news, and it's just one thing after another. It's just like this dark cloud has been cast over the NFL, and it's really saddened the state of affairs in the NFL
right.
with what these players are doing. It's disgusting.
The lack of responsibility and the lack of accountability
right.
that seems to be, as an error amongst these players. It's at what point are these guys going to realize that they are not invincible and that they need to be held accountable for things that happen off the field? Yeah, they're getting paid a ton of money to entertain us, but they have to realize that comes with a price. They sign a contract. They are basically being paid to be entertainers. When you sign those kind of contracts, you have to factor in everything else before you make actions like that. Now, obviously, people make mistakes, and the court system will play out in the Adrian Peterson case, and we know what happened in the Ray Rice case. He's appealing his suspension with Roger Goodell, which to me is ludicrous. Sit this year out, go completely off the grid,
right.
Go into
Take
hiding. Yeah, exactly. Take a lap. Go into hiding and come back next year. And if you want to, apply for reinstatement, Godspeed.
Let the
why
dust
are you
settle.
doing this just a week after all of this came down? It makes no sense to me.
Just one bad story after another with these players, and I want it out. I want these guys to stop.
Yep.
Get these guys out. I don't want them even hanging around their teams the rest of the season.
Yeah, Roger Goodell needs to do something. This is where he needs to earn his $40-something million contract, and instead he's really been kind of in hiding as well. But let's get into the lighter side of football, what we've been obviously waiting for. We got a couple 2-0 teams. We got a couple 0-2 teams. We're going to do a little buying and selling on the 2-0 and 0-2s. Let's start with my Philadelphia Eagles, 2-0. They trailed last week to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 2 weeks ago, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, 17-0 going into half. They outscored them in the second half, 34-6. They went on to a great victory for them in the second half. And then on Monday Night Football, they came back in the second half to take down the mighty Indianapolis Colts in the house that Peyton built, but now that is the house that Andrew Luck resides in. Are you buying or selling the Philadelphia Eagles at 2-0?
I'm buying, but not with top dollar. Let's face it, they were still down 17-0 to the Jaguars,
right.
Not a good team.
Mm-hmm.
They trailed in this game to a good Colts team.
Right.
But the Colts play calling at the end kind of handed it over to them. The pick handed it over to them.
The refereeing as
well. The refereeing was bad. Now, at the same time, good teams take advantage of those opportunities and don't let them go to waste. And
right.
the Eagles did that. So that's why I got to buy. And the division stinks. I have no problem admitting that division stinks.
Yeah, Giants 0-2, the Redskins 1-1, but RG3 looks to be done for most of
right.
the season. And the Cowboys, who knows what they are? They lost week 1, and that offense looked terrible. And then last week versus the Tennessee Titans, the offense looked pretty good. The defense stepped up and played well against Jake Locker and Bishop Sankey and the Tennessee Titans.
Right, exactly, in that division. I think for some reason I just can't fully grasp myself around Nick Foles. And I feel like eventually the luck train is going to run out.
At some point
Not
another.
the Andrew Luck train, the luck behind Nick Foles. So, listen, I guess you have to buy, but I'm not fully convinced that the Eagles are this big-time power.
I don't think that they're a big-time power either. I said to you many times, and to DA as well, that I think that they were going to take a step back and they were going to regress this year because I, too, am not a Nick Foles buyer. I don't think that he's a franchise quarterback, but you know what? He keeps getting it done, and somehow the luck of the Irish keeps striking him. Let's go on to the Cincinnati Bengals, 2-0 as well. Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, Giovanni Bernard, and you got rookie running back Jeremy Hill in there as well. I mean, are you buying the Bengals at 2-0? We saw what they did. They were 8-0 at home last year. But in the playoffs, they come up short every single year. They do great things in the regular season. They put up great offensive numbers. Their defense looks great. And then they get a home game, and they choke at home in the playoffs. What are you doing? Are you buying on them yet? Or is it kind of a reserved, let's wait and see what happens?
I'm buying. I'm buying on the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Dalton kind of gets a little unfair rap for some of those playoff games.
He definitely does.
Remember, their defense is anchored around Geno Atkins. He was lost for the season on Halloween last year. They still rallied behind, but they could have used him against San Diego's offense.
Right.
Cincinnati is just so good at home, and if they win this division again, a division that I didn't think they would win at the beginning of the year because I expected an improved Steelers and improved Ravens team, I think they're going to win this division again. I think they're going to get another home game, and I think they get another crack, and I think they're going to take care of business and make a run. As I look around the AFC, New England has questions.
Right.
Denver certainly has questions.
A lot of questions.
They've made these games way too close for comfort. I mentioned the Colts a little while ago.
Right.
Somebody is going to have to step up in this AFC at some point, and Cincinnati might have the most talent, top to bottom, of any roster in the AFC. So if the quarterback and the coach get their head together, I have to buy this Bengals team. I know that's an if, but right now I'm buying, and I think they will be a force in January.
And they're replacing a lot. They lost their offensive coordinator, Jay Gruden, who is now the head coach in Washington. They lost their defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer, who is now the head coach in Minnesota. So obviously those two guys had a huge impact on this team. The offense doesn't seem to have missed a beat. The defense, that remains to be seen. I think there are still some question marks in that secondary that will need to be answered throughout the season. But right now, I am conservatively buying on the Cincinnati Bengals as being a legitimate team and a legitimate contender in the AFC.
Well, I'll say this about them, too. Everybody just wants to judge Andy Dalton and say he can't win a playoff game. Andy Dalton hasn't peaked as a quarterback.
No.
He's continuing to get better.
Right.
The way he has seen the field in the first two games is unbelievable. He has that connection with Green, Bernard out of the backfield, as you mentioned, Hill. That offense is so good. I think Dalton is only going to get better.
Right.
And those playoff losses that he has now.
Gained experience from him.
Gained experience. I think mentally that will make him a stronger quarterback in January. And he's not playing in front of the New York fans, the Philly fans, those fans who need immediate results in the playoffs. The Cincinnati fans are a very good fan base with that Bengal team, but they won't destroy him as much as he would in the big market where I think he will have time, and I think he wins a playoff game this year.
Now, to stay in the smaller market in terms of fans and in terms of teams, let's go right up to Orchard Park and go to Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills are 2-0. They went into Chicago week 1 and pulled off an improbable win where they basically knocked out everybody who had knockout picks. Everybody went with, a majority of people, I shouldn't say everybody, a majority of people went with the Chicago Bears at home with an E.J. Manuel who's still very unproven. They're 2-0. They got a big win at home on Sunday versus the Miami Dolphins, who were supposedly supposed to be taking a step up in the AFC East. E.J. Manuel, Sammy Watkins, are you buying in on this Buffalo Bills team at 2-0?
I want to so badly because it's been so long. I just can't fully commit.
Yeah.
Now, somebody's going to be a surprise team here.
Right.
In the AFC or NFC, a lot of people love the Bucs.
Mm-hmm.
They've fallen
looked
off
terrible.
the map here, look terrible.
Josh McCown is not going to, he can't lead that team to too many victories.
And as we
year.
mentioned, you got a lot of teams by nature that you just assume are going to be good in the AFC.
Right.
But talent-wise, the AFC is kind of and pretty wide open.
Right.
I don't love the Bills roster, but maybe they do surprise. But I still have my questions at the quarterback position with E.J. Manuel. And let's not forget, defensively, they're doing this without Kiko Alonso. They're refined last year on defense. So I'm not buying yet, but boy, do they have my eyes wide open.
It's a great storyline for the NFL, especially with, the sale of the Buffalo Bills supposedly going through in a timely fashion with who's going to get sold to the owner of the Buffalo Sabres, who wants to keep them in Buffalo, which is a great story. The NFL needs a team in Buffalo because those fans are so great and so passionate. And let's be honest, that is what they rally around. It's 365 days a year. Yeah, they have the Buffalo Sabres, but honestly, football is king, and we know that.
That town shuts down on football Sundays.
There's no
that place
doubt.
was rocking.
And finally, the last 2-0 team that we're going to dive into, the Carolina Panthers. They lost Steve Smith. They lost a couple other guys in the offseason. Cam Newton in his third year in the NFL. They're 2-0. It hasn't been a pretty 2-0, but they're 2-0 nonetheless. And these are the games that you need to navigate early on. You get a couple wins, you dink and dunk, you get to the middle of the season, then you find your stride, as DA has talked about on the show this week. Carolina Panthers 2-0. Ron Rivera, you buying in on them?
I think I have to. I saw what the Lions did on opening night to the Giants putting up that many points. The Carolina defense totally shut down that Lion offense. I don't love the Carolina's offense at all, but that defense is so good. And seeing the way
Luke Kuechly might be the best linebacker in the NFL.
He's unbelievable. And seeing, you know what? You wanted to buy into Atlanta heavy after week 1. They went out and got whooped by Cincinnati. New Orleans is 0-2. I know we're going to get to them in a second. You look around, Tampa Bay is awful. Boy,
Right.
I mean, I think you have to buy Carolina in that NFC South at least early on. I know we have a long way to go, but what's the fun in at least not analyzing these things?
Right.
Carolina is stuck with it here. That defense is way, way too good.
I agree with you in terms of the defense. I think that their defense is top-notch in the NFL, but I'm not buying into Cam Newton and that offense. They have two old running backs in Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. Their wide receiving core, very unproven. They have Kelvin Benjamin basically anchoring that wide receiver core as a rookie wide receiver, and we know that it takes a little bit of an adjustment period for rookies, wide receivers, to learn the route tree, to learn, how to come in and out of breaks on those defensive backs and learn the little idiosyncrasies that make you a great wide receiver. So I am not buying. I am definitely selling on the Carolina Panthers. I think that they are going to come screaming back to earth in the next couple weeks. And speaking of teams that have gotten off to slow starts, we're going to go start with the Indianapolis Colts, who obviously lost on Monday night to my Philadelphia Eagles in heartbreaking fashion. Andrew Luck had one of his least productive games of his career. I fully expected the Indianapolis Colts to almost rout the Eagles because Andrew Luck at home, I think coming off of a loss, they were 13-0, and they were 13-0 against the spread. This is the first time Andrew Luck has ever lost back-to-back games in the NFL. I'm not selling on the Colts. I don't think that they're dead yet. The AFC South is terrible. Houston, Tennessee. Who am I missing? Who's the fourth team?
Jacksonville. Bad. Division reeks.
Exactly.
Stinks.
So Indianapolis Colts, give me them. I think that they'll be there at the end. They'll end up winning the AFC South, and I think that they'll make a move in the playoffs. How about you?
Is calling them a 9-7 and winning the division classifying buying?
I think that's I would consider that a buy, I guess. I mean, you're not throwing heavy money on them, but you're leaning towards them.
It's a very weak buy. I'll say this about the Colts. Defense stinks. Absolutely stinks. I know the Eagles' offense is good. Defense is no good. Offensively, Reggie Wayne has seen his better days. Hakeem Nicks has seen his better days. They have absolutely no run game. Trent Richardson stinks.
Disaster. I mean, two fumbles on Monday night.
And then getting the ball on first and second down where the Colts should have put the ball in Andrew Luck's hands. Yeah, they have T.Y. Hilton. They have Andrew Luck. They have some players.
T.Y.'s exciting.
Right?
Reggie Wayne.
They have some players at tight end. I don't know. I don't love the Indianapolis Colts. I tend to think they're very overrated.
They're the sexy team that everyone was picking preseason to be a contender out of the AFC.
I expected a lot more of them going into New England in the playoffs last year, and they absolutely spit the bit. I can't fully buy, but again, you mentioned the division absolutely stinks.
Yes.
So, you know what? They'll be there. Maybe by default, I have to buy.
I think that that's a fair low buy team there. The New Orleans Saints will stay in the South, and we'll go over to the NFC side. Saints 0-2. Week 1, tough loss. Week 2, you lose in Cleveland. Very happy for the Cleveland fan base. We love 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland listeners out there, and I think that was a great home win. I think that's their first home opener win in over a decade.
In over 10 years.
So New Orleans 0-2. Are they going to rebound? They get the Minnesota Vikings this weekend at home in New Orleans. They're going to. I personally think that they're going to rebound nicely this weekend, and I think they're just going to put it to Minnesota. And I think that they'll be there at the end as well. The NFC South is very up in the air. You're with Carolina 2-0, Atlanta 1-1. But like you said, week 1 they look great. Week 2 they look completely inept on offense. So I think that the Saints once again will be there by default, like you think with the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, because the offense is too good. They're the classic Jekyll and Hyde team, sort of like you saw Seattle dogging it in San Diego on Sunday. Away from New Orleans, that Saints team
mediocre.
Is so ordinary and nothing special about them. That offense does not translate on the road. They still could put up their share of points. And enough with calling Rob Ryan a good defensive coordinator. Oh, my God. The Browns, the Cowboys, now the Saints. He's fighting with Sean Payton on the sidelines on Sunday.
Right.
He stinks.
Yeah.
Is there another more overrated coach than Rob Ryan on that? How many times do we need the screenshot of him, too? He's not the head coach of the team.
Well, and talk about a member of Chubbo Nation. Can that guy get a bigger gut?
I know. I like my Chubbo Nation guys a little more clean cut, though.
I kind of, the long hair, the beard, I kind of get it. He's a free spirit.
Of course you would.
Obviously.
Free spirit, basically the hippie that you are.
Right, the hippie. All right, the last two of the 0-2s that we're going to run through real quick. Let's do these very quickly. Kansas City Chiefs 0-2, not buying, selling that team. You and I were both on board with them coming back to earth this year. I think they are terrible.
4-12.
Bad decision giving Alex Smith all that money. Andy Reid, so overrated as a coach. So we're both in agreement there. Sell very hard on the Kansas City Chiefs. The last 0-2 team, your New York Football Giants. Brutal loss in week 1 on Monday night in Detroit. Last week, brutal loss at home to the Carson Palmer-less Arizona Cardinals. Drew Stanton, Michigan State quarterback, coming in and kind of taking it to the New York Giants secondary, who you thought would be
I wouldn't say taking it to. If you watched the game.
Did they win?
He didn't take it to it,
He took it to him enough where they won.
Took it to him.
Hey, come on. That Giants defense, very, very overrated, especially by the man to my right here, Sean Mraz. So Giants 0-2. You buying them or you selling them?
I can't buy them as a playoff team, but they're not nearly as bad as everybody thinks. They took a lot of positive steps in that Arizona game. Now, 3 years ago, you're not saying about the Giants. You're pulling your hair out at a loss like that. But there's a lot of reasons for optimism based off that loss.
Conservative optimism with that offense?
Right, because the offensive line and Eli were the biggest question marks, and those two might have been their biggest strengths in that game.
If those are your two biggest strengths, you're in for a long,
How about
season.
How about Larry Donnell, big-time tight end the Giants have there?
Who? Speaking of the Giants, let's transition seamlessly, obviously, which we do very well here, into coming in Sunday after that Giants loss. Obviously, you're pretty devastated about it. You over-ate. They're 0-2 for the second straight.
Well, calm down. I'm overeating on wins, too, so it doesn't make any difference.
So you're coming in 0-2. You're in the elevator with Schwartzo. We know how Schwartzo's a New York Jets fan, but he's a very big family man, as is obviously noted on the show. What was Schwartzo like to you? What was his reaction to you on Sunday when you guys were coming up in the elevator?
Well, essentially, I'm sick to my stomach. I'm driving into work. Like I just pointed out, I'm trying to look at the positives of that Giant game.
Running through plays, the 3rd and 7, the interference, the lack of calls.
And at that time, as I'm riding the elevator up, I'm trying to check my fandom at the door with the Giants and try to get into total work mode. Okay, we have all these NFL games to dissect. Schwartzo is a lifelong Jets fan. The Jets with a brutal loss, the fake timeout. So I look at him. I go, tough one for us today or whatever. He goes, really doesn't matter. He looks at me point blank. He goes, biggest win of the day was, and he mentions his son's Pee-wee football team, the 8-year-old kids running around.
Come on.
And looks at me as I'm basically, turning white, sick to my stomach over
ready
the Giant loss. Ready to throw up. And if I'm a diehard Jet fan, I'm ready to throw up too. Not that you expected to beat Green Bay, but it was all there for the taking.
Right,
and
you're
your
up
coaching
21-0.
staff still can't figure out timeouts on the sidelines.
Marty Morningway,
I would
what are
be
you
even
doing?
more sick if I was him. And
Right.
he's basically shaking it off like, it's no big deal. We had a couple slices of pepperoni pizza, and the boys won their football game at 10 in the morning.
That's such a bad look for him.
And you know what? And we mentioned this about Schwartz. Schwartz is the kind of guy, if the Jets would have upset them, like you had mentioned this to me behind the scenes.
Right.
If Schwartzo and the Jets win that game, Schwartzo comes in with the Joe Namath throwback. He's beating his chest. He's talking to the other Jet fans in the newsroom.
How about my Jets?
And he basically shakes it off like, no big deal.
Yeah,
enough. It makes me sick to my stomach. You got to be all in as a fan, and I don't think Schwartzo's all in.
No, he's definitely not all in. Obviously, you want to take pride in your son's team, in your son's games, and how he plays. And apparently they got some big hit on the Long Island local television thing where he was trying to show you during the game.
Oh, yeah.
During the Monday night game, and that turned into a little bit of a hubbub between the two of you. We won't delve into that, for purposes of keeping things relatively calm and compatible here on the mothership. But one thing that is not going to stay calm in a friendship that is getting frostier by the second, you and I melted down on the show on
Here we go.
Tuesday morning after the Giants. What the hell am I talking about?
See, they're in your head. The Giants are in your head. This Philly mentality.
After the Eagles came back and won pretty miraculously on Monday night, I had written them off. I thought they were done. And Merrill Reese's call on the Cody Parkey game-winning field goal, he went not over the top, but he was pretty excited for
Did he run down to the field and pick up any ticker tape to bring home for him after that call?
So anyway, you've been needling me about that for the past 36 hours or so, and it really gets under my skin, and I don't think people understand the complex between Philly and New York. New York is the big brother. New York is the bigger city. It's got multiple sports
better
teams,
city.
allegedly better, blah, blah, blah. But
Better
one thing that
smelling
I will
people.
never be able to get over until the Eagles win a Super Bowl, the Eagles can go 16-0, and it won't matter. 15-0, 16-0. I can't count.
Jeez, you don't even know how many games are in an NFL season. You're so frazzled by the Eagles.
I
Calm
am
down.
so frazzled by the Eagles. It's got me all out of sorts here. I can't think straight. They go 16-0 in the regular season, but it won't matter unless they win that Super Bowl because, look what we did. We got 2 Super Bowls in the past decade.
Well, you don't play for
Shut
Cracker
up.
Jack prizes. You play for the Super Bowls. And the Eagle fan, you could have the Deshaun Jackson punt return. You could have the David
Which will
Akers
always
field
stick in your
goals.
craw.
You could have all these big moments that make me sick over the years. But we will always have Mr. Lombardi and his trophy. And that case, that empty trophy case
See
in
the way he's
Philadelphia,
talking, you can see how infuriated I get over this.
And the
I
janitor
honestly, I want
comes
to reach
through,
across and I want
and
to
he
shove
keeps
his mic down
dusting
his
the
throat.
shelves,
I
going,
can't
maybe
take this
one
guy.
maybe one day Chip will get us there.
If you,
maybe
if you
one
don't
day.
stop whispering, you're going to get the mic somewhere where you don't want it.
Philly anger reigns true again.
Always will. There's a complex. You're the...
I'd say security has to look out at the Super Bowl parade for all your anger. Oh, that's right. That's not going to happen either.
As you can see, my plight against New York grows steadily every day.
How'd that 2009 World Series work out?
I'll take the 2008 World Series. It's the only championship I've ever seen in 27 years. So, you know what? Whatever. And that's bad managing by Charlie Manuel, leaving in Pedro Martinez.
Who's your
don't
daddy?
even get me started. Don't even get me started. I think it was the New York Post that had the next day after that. It was, or maybe it was the day of the game. On his head on a baby in a diaper with the Who's Your Daddy.
Classic.
That was great.
Classic
I'll give
cover.
you guys that. That was very funny. Let's wrap up here. Obviously, I make my college football picks, Brock's Locks. You make your Sodium Licks picks for the NFL. We are off to a very slow start here. I'm 2-5. I was 1-3 last weekend. Some really, really bad beats.
We were 2-5 combined last week. I'm 3-3. At least I'm at the 500.
We're hemorrhaging money. Basically, I'm selling off assets here, looking off, just so I can pay rent for the next month because I am looking to capitalize on my locks because I was very, very confident heading into last weekend. Hype. I didn't buy into my own hype. I did my research, and I really thought that I had some really solid picks, and then some terrible coaching by Mike Bobo at Georgia. UTSA was a flyer, I'll admit that. And then the
Penn State
and the 3.5 killed me. They won by 3 at Rutgers. I don't know what the hell's going on here. We need to right the ship soon because 2-5 is unacceptable.
Never bet against grease trucks when they're getting points. Didn't you learn that?
No, I did not learn that. Oh, yeah. No, yeah, I should have betted against them because last year we went to the grease trucks. Houston blew them out by about 35, I think.
Yeah, and the mozzarella sticks blew me out.
So we're on Monday of the show, or Sunday night into Monday of the show, the epic fail was supposed to be our picks this weekend. And Mraz, so everyone who doesn't know, Mraz does the epic fails. He cuts out from the show for about 20 minutes, puts some audio pieces together and puts together a nice little epic fail. So the epic fail was supposed to be a combination of Mraz and I talking about how terrible our picks were this weekend. Well, the real, the trench warfare guy that Mraz is, he's a guy in the trenches that you don't want with you, threw me right under the bus and completely cut himself out and threw me right under the bus, making me look like I'm the only idiot on the show making terrible picks. So thanks for that, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Listen, if you work in radio like I do, that's right, you do too because you work next to me every night. Timing is everything in radio, and you know what? We like to keep the epic fails tight around that 2-minute mark.
Yeah,
and quite frankly, I was running out of time to include mine.
You were over the top. You were over the top.
I had to, put those calls in there for dramatic effect. It just played better to the crowd. I would have loved bashing myself, but you know what? We make fun of myself enough. It was time that you got it stuck to you. A little week of anti-Brock is good for everybody's health. Listening.
So that's what this is. This is all about the Chubbo Nation and the whole fat thing, and now this is just sticking it right up my craw to me.
Never go against a dictator.
So that'll wrap it up for the side B of the Permission Granted podcast. Make sure to check us out on iTunes, subscribe to the Permission Granted podcast, rate us on there, leave any kind of commentary you like, whether you want Mraz and I to shut up, whether you want us to talk more behind-the-scenes stuff instead of breaking down our NFL, college football, breaking down sports in general. Also, DA will put this up on the YouTube page, youtube.com/The DA Show. And all three of us will tweet it out at DA on CBS, at KBrockJR, and at Sean Morash CBS, not Sean Mraz, which I think you should change your Twitter to, by the way.
No, I'm going to go with the birth certificate name.
Yeah, but I mean, how are you known in radio? What does everybody call you in radio? I call you Mraz. Everybody calls you Mraz. That's what your Twitter handle should be. Let's be honest.
Listen, I'll take it into consideration.
So that's that. Hopefully, we get to enjoy the rest of the week in college football and the upcoming week in the NFL, and we will catch you next week.